On a frontier world scorched by endless war, the sky never cleared. Ash fell like snow, gray and quiet, coating the rusted hulls of abandoned dropships and the bones of those who never made it home. This was Series 9, a human colony clinging to survival at the edge of known space. The Krell had come without warning, swarming insectoid machines that devoured cities and turned the living into fuel. Now only scattered outposts remained, each one a flickering candle in a storm of teeth and steel. Daniel Cruz was not a hero, he was a scout. Lean and tired, with eyes that had seen too many friends die too fast. His job was simple: walk the wastes, find threats before they found the outpost, and report back. Nothing more. Nothing less. That morning his sensor pack had pinged something strange. A heat signature deep in the dead zone where nothing should be alive. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and steady, buried under layers of interference. Curiosity, or maybe just boredom, made him go. He walked for hours, his boots crunching over blackened rock. The wind howled through jagged canyons, carrying the scent of ozone and decay. Then he saw it. A crater, fresh and smoking, ringed with twisted metal that shimmered like liquid glass. Not human, not Krell, something else. In the center lay a ship unlike any he'd ever seen. It looked grown, not built. Smooth curves wrapped in vines that glowed faintly blue, pulsing in time with the heartbeat from his sensors. Cracks ran along its side, leaking mist that curled into the air like breath. Daniel approached slowly, rifle ready. Silence pressed in. Then a sound, soft, pained. A whimper. He circled the wreck and found her. She was curled beneath a torn canopy of living metal. One arm wrapped around her ribs, the other clutching a small, scaled creature pressed against her chest. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, like stone kissed by moonlight. Long silver hair clung to her face, damp with sweat and blood. Her ears tapered to delicate points, and her eyes, when they opened, were the color of storm clouds, wide with fear and pain. She was not human, but she was alive. The creature beside her stirred. It lifted its head, eyes blazing gold, and let out a low growl. It was no bigger than a large dog, but its body was covered in obsidian scales that shimmered like oil on water. Wings, leathery and veined, twitched at its sides. A dragon. Daniel had heard stories, myths from old Earth, tales told in barracks to pass the time. But this was real, and it was watching him like it could tear his throat out with one snap. He raised his hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, voice rough from dust and disuse. The elf woman flinched but didn't look away. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She was fading. Daniel saw the wound, a deep gash across her side, blackened at the edges. Krell venom. If it spread, she'd be dead by nightfall. He glanced back the way he came. Outpost 7 was 20 miles east, too far to carry her on foot, but leaving her meant certain death. And the dragon, Ember, though he didn't know its name yet, would never let him near her if he tried to move her roughly. So he knelt. "I'm going to help you," he said, "but you have to trust me." The dragon growled again, but the woman placed a trembling hand on its neck. The sound stopped. Her eyes held his, searching. Then barely she nodded. Daniel worked fast. He tore strips from his undershirt, cleaned the wound with the last of his med spray, and packed it with antiseptic moss he'd scavenged weeks ago from a ruined greenhouse. It wasn't much, but it might slow the poison. He fashioned a sling from his pack straps and gently lifted her. She gasped but didn't fight. Ember coiled around her legs, then leapt onto Daniel's back, claws digging in just enough to warn him. Not to hurt, but to watch. The walk back was agony. The wind picked up, howling like a thing alive. Ash stung his eyes. Every step sent fire through his own old injuries, but he kept moving. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring words in a language that sounded like wind through crystal chimes. Once she whispered a name, Lila, and he realized it was hers. By the time the outpost's floodlights appeared on the horizon, Daniel's legs were shaking. The gate guards nearly shot him on sight. A human carrying an alien and a dragon? Unheard of. They raised rifles, shouting orders. But Lila stirred, lifting her head just enough to meet their eyes. Something in her gaze made them hesitate. Commander Garrett came out himself, tall and grim, his face carved from years of loss. He took one look at Lila, at the black veins creeping up her arm, and scowled. "You brought an alien into my base," he said, voice low and dangerous. "She was dying," Daniel replied, voice hoarse, "and she's not with the Krell." How do you know that? Because the Krell don't bleed like this. They don't have dragons, and they don't look at you like they remember your soul. Garrett studied him a long moment. Then he nodded to the medics. Get her inside. Quarantine Bay 3, and keep that lizard under guard. They took Lila from him. Ember hissed and snapped at the medics until Lila whispered something soft. The dragon calmed, but its eyes never left Daniel. That night alone in the barracks, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her eyes, storm gray, ancient, and strangely kind. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or why her ship had crashed. But he knew one thing. The Krell would come. They always did when something valuable appeared, and deep down he also knew this. Saving her had just changed everything. By dawn, sensors screamed. Movement in the wastes. Not one signal. Dozens, then hundreds. The Krell had found the crash site. And they were coming for her. Daniel pulled on his gear, heart pounding. He didn't understand why, but he felt it in his bones. Lila wasn't just a refugee. She was a key, a weapon, maybe even a queen. And if the Krell wanted her dead, then humanity had a reason to keep her alive. He ran toward the armory not as a scout, but as something new, something willing to stand between a wounded elf, her dragon, and the storm of teeth rushing toward them all. The outpost buzzed with tension by morning. News of the alien girl spread fast among the soldiers, whispered in corners and traded like ration cards. Some called her a spy. Others said she was a ghost from old myths, come to judge humanity before the Krell finished them off. Only Daniel knew the truth. She was hurt, scared, and far from home. And her dragon, Ember, watched everyone with eyes that missed nothing. Commander Garrett called a meeting in the command bunker. Maps covered the walls, red lines marking Krell movements. The enemy had massed near the crash site, but they weren't attacking. Not yet. They were waiting, watching. Garrett paced, his boots heavy on the metal floor. We don't know what she is, he said, voice tight. But the Krell want her. That means she's dangerous. Or valuable. Maybe both. She saved my squad last night, Daniel said, stepping forward. When the Krell scouts hit the east wall, Ember burned through 3 of them before they reached the gate. A trick, said Sergeant Mills, arms crossed. Bait. They let her look like an ally, so we lower our guard. She's barely conscious, Daniel shot back. She can't even stand. Garrett held up a hand. Silence fell. He turned to the medic. How is she? Stable for now, the medic replied. The venom's spreading slower than expected. She's fighting it. But without proper elven medicine, she won't last the week. Garrett's jaw tightened. He looked at Daniel. You brought her here. You vouch for her. So what do you suggest? Daniel hesitated. He had no plan, only instinct. Give her a chance. If she wanted us dead, she'd have done it already. Ember could have torn through this place while we slept. Garrett didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, staring out at the gray sky. Then he turned. We follow protocol. Any non-human entity found on sovereign human soil must prove loyalty or be detained. Permanently. Daniel's stomach dropped. You can't be serious. I am, Garrett said. She trespassed. She carries unknown biology. She might be carrying Krell tech inside her. We can't risk it. So what? You're going to lock her up while she's dying? No, Garrett said. We'll test her, publicly. If she's innocent, the outpost will see it. If not, well, we'll know soon enough. That afternoon, they dragged Lila into the central yard. She could barely walk, leaning on 2 medics, her face pale but calm. Ember snarled and snapped at the guards, but Lila whispered a word, and the dragon stilled, though its tail lashed like a whip. The entire outpost gathered, soldiers, engineers, even the cooks. All eyes on the elf woman. Garrett stood on the raised platform, voice booming. This alien entered our territory without permission. Under martial law, that is a punishable offense. 10 lashes. Standard sentence. A murmur ran through the crowd. 10 lashes with a neural whip would shred skin and fry nerves. For someone already weak, it could be fatal. Daniel stepped forward before he could stop himself. I'll take them. Garrett turned slowly. What? I brought her here. I'm responsible. If she broke your law, then I did too. Punish me instead. Garrett's eyes narrowed. You don't get to rewrite the rules, Cruz. Then let me share the sentence. 5 each. No, Garrett said flatly. It's 10. For her. Or you walk away. Daniel looked at Lila. She met his gaze, her storm gray eyes wide with something he couldn't name. Shock, sorrow, maybe gratitude. She shook her head slightly, as if to say no, but he'd already made up his mind. I'll take all 10, he said. Silence. Garrett studied him, then nodded. So be it. They stripped Daniel to the waist and tied him to the whipping post. The crowd grew quiet. The whip handler, a grim man named Voss, tested the neural coil. It hummed, crackling with blue energy. The first lash tore across Daniel's back like fire. He gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. The second came harder. By the fifth, his vision blurred. Blood dripped down his spine, mixing with sweat and ash. He thought of his sister, long dead on Series 9, and how she'd once taken a beating for him when they were kids. Now it was his turn. When the 10th lash fell, he slumped against the ropes, barely conscious. Someone cut him loose. Hands caught him before he hit the ground. Through the haze, he saw Lila kneeling beside him. Her hands glowed faintly as she pressed them to his wounds. Warmth spread through his back, dulling the pain. Ember lay curled at his feet, head low, a soft rumble in its chest. Not a growl, but something like comfort. Garrett watched from the platform, face unreadable. That night, alarms blared again. Krell scouts, dozens of them, swarmed the outer fence. Not a full attack, but a test. They moved fast, silent, claws scraping metal. The outpost scrambled. Daniel, wrapped in bandages, grabbed his rifle and ran to the east wall. Lila was already there, standing tall despite her weakness. Ember crouched beside her, wings half spread. As the first Krell scaled the wall, Ember leapt. Fire erupted from its jaws, a white-hot stream that melted armor and flesh alike. Lila raised her hands and the ground trembled. Vines shot from cracks in the concrete, wrapping around Krell limbs, dragging them down. Thorns pierced their carapaces, leaking black ichor. Daniel fired, picking off stragglers. But he watched Lila more than the enemy. She moved like water, graceful and fierce, her silver hair whipping in the wind. She wasn't just fighting, she was protecting. Every blast of Ember's fire, every vine she summoned, shielded human soldiers. When the last Krell fell, the outpost stood in stunned silence. Then someone clapped, then another. Soon the whole yard echoed with cheers. Garrett walked over, his expression softer now. He looked at Lila, then at Daniel. You took 10 lashes for her, he said quietly. And she just saved 20 lives. Daniel nodded, wincing. Told you she wasn't the enemy. Garrett didn't answer, but he turned to the medic. Get her real treatment, full medical access, and give that dragon its own pen, near the armory, where it can see the sky. As the crowd dispersed, Lila knelt beside Daniel again. She didn't speak human words, but her eyes said enough. She placed a small glowing seed in his palm. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Ember nudged his hand with its snout, then curled around him like a living blanket. Daniel closed his eyes, pain and exhaustion pulling him under. But for the first time in years, he didn't dream of fire or falling. He dreamed of silver eyes and wings against the stars. And far above, hidden in the clouds, 3 shadows circled. Silent. Massive. Watching. Lila's brothers had arrived. Dawn came quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a held breath. The outpost stirred slowly. Soldiers nursing wounds and swapping stories about the dragon's fire and the elf woman's vines. Daniel lay in the med bay, back wrapped in fresh bandages, the glowing seed Lila had given him tucked under his pillow. It pulsed faintly, warm to the touch like a tiny heart. Outside, Lila stood alone on the roof, face turned to the sky. Ember perched on the railing beside her, wings folded, eyes scanning the clouds. She knew they were coming. She had felt it in her bones since the moment she crashed. Her brothers would not let her fall without a trace. They were bound by blood, by oath, by the ancient laws of the Veiled Spire, and now they were close. High above the ash clouds, 3 ships drifted like ghosts. They were not made of steel or alloy, but of living crystal and woven starlight. shaped like crescent moons with trailing auroras. No human sensors could detect them. No Krell weapon could pierce their shields. They moved in silence as elven warships always did. On the lead vessel, Kieran stood at the command node, his silver armor etched with runes that glowed when he breathed. He was the eldest, broad-shouldered and stern with eyes like frozen lakes. Beside him, Rafe leaned against the hull, arms crossed, his dark hair tied back, a smirk playing on his lips despite the tension in his jaw. Tate, the youngest, paced like a cage storm, fists clenched, eyes burning with fury. "She's alive," Kieran said, voice low, "but weak. And among humans, Rafe scoffed. "The same ones who let the Krell devour half the galaxy while they squabbled over rocks and oil. They saved her," Tate snapped. "Or someone did. The sensor logs show a human male took punishment for her. 10 lashes. Kieran's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his stance. 10 lashes. For an alien, yes, Tate said. And last night she fought beside them. Ember burned Krell on their walls." Rafe whistled softly. "Our little sister defending humans. Father would have fainted." "Father is dead," Kieran said quietly, "and the Spire is silent. If Lila found allies here, we do not question it. We honor it." He turned to the ship's core, placing a hand on the pulsing crystal. "Descend. Full visibility. Let them see who comes for her." Below, the sky rippled. Light bent and twisted, and then 3 ships appeared, hanging in the air like blades drawn from the heavens. Alarms blared across the outpost. Soldiers scrambled, rifles raised, eyes wide with terror. Garrett ran to the command tower, shouting orders. "Hold fire, do not engage," but it was too late. One of the younger soldiers panicked, fired a rocket. It streaked toward the lead ship and vanished in a flash of blue light, absorbed before it came within 100 meters. Then a ramp of light unfolded from the belly of the largest vessel. 3 figures stepped out, walking down as if on solid ground. They wore armor that shimmered like moonlight on water, tall and regal, faces sharp with elven grace. Their eyes scanned the outpost, cold and unreadable. Garrett stepped forward, hands raised. "This is human territory. State your purpose." The tallest one, Kieran, stopped 10 paces away. His voice was calm, deep, and carried without effort. "We are here for our sister." Daniel, leaning on a crutch, pushed through the crowd. Layla stood beside him now, pale but steady, Ember at her heels. When she saw her brothers, her breath caught. She took a step forward, then stopped as if unsure. Kieran's gaze fell on her. For the first time, his stern mask cracked. "Lila," she nodded, tears in her eyes. "Kieran, Rafe, Tate." Rafe grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You look like you wrestled a black hole and lost." Tate strode forward, ignoring everyone else, and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "We thought you were dead." The signal cut out over the void. "My ship was hit," she whispered. "I crashed here. They helped me." Her eyes flicked to Daniel. Kieran followed her gaze. He studied the human, bandaged, limping, but standing tall. "You are the one who took the lashes," Daniel nodded. "Someone had to." Kieran stepped closer. The crowd tensed. Ember growled low, but Lila placed a hand on its head and it quieted. "Why?" Kieran asked. "You did not know her. She is not your kin, not your kind." Daniel met his eyes. "She was hurt. And alone. That's enough." Kieran was silent for a long moment. Then he removed his right gauntlet, black metal etched with silver vines, and placed it at Daniel's feet. The gesture stunned everyone. Among elves, to remove one's battle gauntlet before another was to offer fealty, to swear loyalty not out of duty but choice. "No human has ever borne pain for one of our blood," Kieran said, voice thick with something like awe. "You shielded her when you owed her nothing. That debt is now ours." Rafe and Tate exchanged glances, then stepped forward. One by one, they removed their own gauntlets and placed them beside Kieran's. Garrett stared, speechless. This was not just diplomacy. This was a vow older than empires. Lila looked at Daniel, her eyes shining. "They will fight for you now," she said softly. "Not because I asked, but because you earned it." That night, the outpost changed. The elves did not stay aboard their ships. They walked among the humans, not as conquerors, but as guests. Rafe challenged soldiers to arm wrestling matches and lost on purpose just to make them laugh. Tate inspected the armory, muttering about primitive but clever designs. Kieran spoke with Garrett for hours, sharing intel on Krell hive patterns no human had ever seen. Daniel sat by the fire, back still sore, but feeling lighter than he had in years. Lila joined him, Ember curling around their feet like a living rug. They would have burned this place to ash if they found you hurt, she said. I figured, Daniel replied. But they didn't, because you trusted me. She smiled, small and real. And because you were brave. Above them, the 3 elven ships hovered like silent guardians, their auroras painting the ash clouds in colors no human had ever seen. For the first time, Outpost 7 did not feel like a last stand. It felt like the beginning of something new, and far in the wastes the Krell stirred. Their queen had sensed the arrival of the Veiled Spire's heirs. She would not wait much longer. The real war was coming, but now humanity would not face it alone. The calm did not last. 3 days after the Elven brothers arrived, the sky turned red. Not from ash, not from fire, but from something deeper, older, hungrier. The Krell Queen had awakened. She had sensed the presence of the Veiled Spire's bloodline, and she would not let it slip through her claws again. This was not a raid. This was an ending. Her armada descended like a storm made of teeth and shadow. Hundreds of hive ships, black and jagged, tore through the upper atmosphere, blotting out the sun. They did not hover. They came straight down, screaming as they broke the sound barrier, crashing into the wastes like falling stars. From their bellies poured legions, Krell warriors twice the size of before, armored in chitin fused with stolen human tech, eyes glowing with stolen intelligence. Outpost 7's alarms wailed without pause. Garrett barked orders, voice raw. Seal the gates, reinforce the east wall. Get the civilians to the bunker, but there were no civilians left. Only soldiers. Only fighters. And now, allies. Kieran stood atop the command tower, his armor gleaming under the blood-red sky. He raised a hand and the 3 elven warships responded, shifting formation, their auroras flaring like shields of light. Rafe and Tate moved through the ranks, handing out strange, glowing weapons, crystal blades that hummed with energy, bows that fired arrows of solid lightning. Daniel stood at the main gate, rifle in hand, back still tender but steady. Lila was beside him, her wounds nearly healed, her eyes sharp with focus. Ember coiled around her feet, scales rippling like molten stone. They're coming for you, Daniel said. Then let them come, Lila replied. The first wave hit at dusk. Krell warriors scaled the walls like insects, claws scraping metal, jaws snapping. Human guns roared, cutting down dozens, but more kept coming. Then Ember leapt. Fire erupted from its maw, not orange, but white-blue. So hot it turned Krell armor to slag in seconds. It soared above the battlefield, diving and twisting, a living comet of destruction. Rafe fought on the north wall, his crystal blade slicing through Krell limbs like paper. Tate stood at the south gate, summoning thorned vines from the cracked earth, impaling enemies before they could breach. Kieran moved like a ghost through the chaos, his presence alone enough to make Krell hesitate. Something in his aura reminded them of ancient predators they had once feared, long before they became machines. But the real threat came from above. A massive hive ship larger than the others hovered over the center of the outpost. From its belly dropped a figure, tall, armored in black chitin, face hidden behind a mask of bone. The Krell Queen's champion. It landed with a cratering thud and the ground cracked beneath its feet. It pointed a clawed hand at Lila. A sound echoed. Not a voice, but a thought forced into every mind. Give her to us, or we burn your world to ash. Lila stepped forward. No, the champion charged. Daniel fired, but the bullet sparked harmlessly off its armor. Rafe and Tate moved to intercept, but the champion was fast. Too fast. It backhanded Rafe into a wall, then grabbed Tate by the throat. Kieran appeared, in a blur of silver, slamming his gauntlet into the champion's side. The impact sent shockwaves through the air. The 2 titans clashed, metal and chitin ringing like war drums. Lila closed her eyes. She placed her hands on the ground, and the earth answered. Roots burst from the soil, thick as tree trunks, wrapping around the champion's legs. Thorns as long as knives pierced its joints. It roared, thrashing, but the vines held. Ember dove from above, blasting its face with fire. The mask cracked, revealing eyes filled with rage and fear. Kieran drove his blade through its chest. Black blood sprayed. The champion collapsed, twitching, then went still. For a moment, silence. Then the hive ship above pulsed. A new sound filled the air, a deep, resonant hum that made teeth rattle and bones ache. The Krell Queen herself was coming. Lila looked up. She wants my essence. To evolve. To become something even the stars fear. Then we stop her, Daniel said. Kieran joined them, breathing hard. Our ships can shield the outpost, but not for long. Her hive mind is strong. Then we go to her, Lila said. Rafe wiped blood from his lip. You're not serious. I am. She's anchored to that ship. If we destroy the core, the hive collapses. Tate nodded. We go in fast, hit hard, get out. Daniel looked at his rifle, then at Lila. I'm coming. Kieran studied him. You are wounded. So are you. A ghost of a smile touched Kieran's lips. Very well. They launched from the outpost in a stolen Krell skiff, cloaked by elven magic. Ember rode on the roof, wings spread, eyes locked on the hive ship. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The hive ship was a nightmare made real, walls of pulsing flesh, floors that breathed, corridors lit by glowing veins. Krell warriors swarmed, but the group moved like a single blade. Rafe cut left, Tate right, Kieran ahead, Daniel covering the rear. Lila walked in the center, hands glowing, whispering words that made the very air shiver. They reached the core chamber, a vast, pulsing heart of black crystal, suspended in midair, surrounded by writhing tendrils. At its center floated the Krell, Queen, her form shifting between insect and something almost human, eyes burning with cold intelligence. You should have given her to me. The voice echoed in their minds. Now you all die. Tendrils lashed out. Kieran and his brothers formed a ring, blades flashing. Daniel fired at the base of the tendrils, drawing fire. Ember circled above, blasting weak points with precise bursts of flame. Lila stepped toward the core. This ends now. She raised her hands. Light erupted from her body, silver, pure, ancient. The core cracked. The Queen screamed, a sound that shattered glass and sanity alike. Now, Lila shouted. Daniel tossed a plasma grenade into the crack. Kieran grabbed Lila and pulled her back. They ran as the core exploded. The hive ship shook violently. Walls collapsed. Fire filled the corridors. They barely made it to the skiff as the ship began to break apart. Outside, the sky lit up as the hive ship detonated. The remaining Krell forces froze, then collapsed. Their hive mind severed. The armada fell from the sky like dead birds. On the ground, the outpost stood battered but unbroken. Cheers rose from the survivors. Daniel slumped against the skiff's hull, exhausted. Lila knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, steady. You did it, he said. We did it, she corrected. Kieran looked at the burning sky, then at the humans below. The Krell will return, but not today. Rafe grinned, leaning on his blade. Next time they'll think twice before messing with our sister. Tate just nodded, eyes on the horizon. We stay, for now. And so they did. The elves did not leave. They helped rebuild the walls, shared their knowledge, trained human soldiers in ways of old magic and new war. Ember became a mascot of sorts, sleeping in the mess hall, stealing sausages when no one looked. Daniel walked the ramparts each night, Lila often beside him, the twin moons casting long shadows. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The war had changed them all. But for the first time it felt like they were fighting for something more than survival. They were fighting for a future. Together. Fires of war cooled, but their embers glowed in every rebuilt wall, every shared meal, every quiet glance between human and elf. Outpost 7 was no longer just a human holdout. It had become something new, a bridge between worlds forged in blood, pain, and an oath spoken beneath twin moons. In the days after the hive ship fell, the elven fleet remained in orbit, their auroras painting the night sky in soft blues and violets. Down below, humans and elves worked side by side. Rafe taught soldiers how to read the wind for enemy movement. Tate helped engineers weave living vines into the outpost's defenses. plants that hardened like steel when threatened. Kieran spent hours with Garrett, mapping Krell hive remnants across the sector, sharing star charts older than human civilization, and Lila stayed. She could have left. Her brothers offered her a place on the lead ship, a return to the veiled spire hidden beyond the galactic rim, but she shook her head. "My place is here," she said, eyes on Daniel as he supervised repairs on the east gate. Garrett heard her. He said nothing at first, but the next morning, he called a full assembly in the central yard. Every soldier stood at attention. The elves stood among them, not apart. "We fought together," Garrett began, voice rough but clear. "Bled together, lost together, and won together. Today we make it official." He turned to Kieran. "Your house has shown us honor we did not earn, but you gave it anyway. So I offer this. Outpost 7 is no longer just human. It is joint territory, elven and human equal. Always." Kieran bowed his head slightly. "The veiled spire accepts." Then Garrett looked at Daniel. "You saw what others feared. You acted when others hesitated. You took lashes for a stranger, and in doing so you saved us all." He unclipped the insignia from his own uniform, a silver hawk symbol of Outpost Command, and pinned it on Daniel's chest. "You're in charge of the new task force. Human and elven, call it what you want." Daniel stood stunned. "Sir, I'm just a scout." "Not anymore," Garrett said. "You're the first link in a new chain. Make it strong." That evening, under the twin moons, one pale white, one deep amber, the outpost held a quiet ceremony. No speeches, no fanfare, just a circle of fire, human and elf standing together. Lila stepped into the center, Ember at her side. She raised her hands and the ground bloomed. Silver flowers pushed through the ash, glowing softly, their petals shaped like stars. Kieran removed his sword and placed it point down in the earth. Rafe and Tate followed, then Daniel laid his rifle beside them. It was not surrender. It was promise. "From this night," Kieran said, "the House of the Veiled Spire swears eternal alliance to those who shield the innocent, no matter their blood. We do not serve humanity." "We stand with it," a murmur rose, not of doubt but of awe. Even the hardest soldiers felt it. Something had shifted in the universe, not just an alliance but a kinship. In the weeks that followed, the joint task force took shape. They called it the Ash Wardens, named for the world that tried to kill them and failed. Humans trained with crystal bows. Elves learned to use plasma rifles. Ember flew patrols with scout drones, his fire now calibrated to burn only Krell, never friend. Daniel led from the front, but never alone. Lila walked beside him not as a symbol, but as a partner. She taught him the old ways. How to listen to the wind, how to read the stars, not just for navigation, but for warning. He taught her human stubbornness, the kind that says not today, even when the odds say otherwise. One night, long after the last repair was made and the last report filed, they stood on the highest rampart watching the stars. Ember lay curled at their feet, snoring softly. "Do you ever miss your home?" Daniel asked. Lila was quiet for a while. "I miss the forests, the singing rivers, the way the sky turned gold at dawn. But home isn't just a place. It's who you protect, who you stand with." She looked at him. "I'm home now." He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The wind carried the scent of silver flowers and distant rain. Somewhere below, Rafe laughed at something Tate said. Kieran stood watch, silent and steady. They never spoke of love, not in words. But it lived in the way Lila healed Daniel's scars with her hands, in the way he always saved her a seat at mess, in the way Ember growled at anyone who looked at her wrong. The galaxy was still dangerous. Krell remnants lurked in dead systems. Other powers watched from the dark, curious about this strange union of human grit and elven grace. But Outpost 7 was ready, because now they were more than survivors. They were the beginning. And as the twin moons rose higher, casting long shadows that blended human and elf into one silhouette, the wind whispered a truth older than war. When one stands for another without reason, loyalty becomes legend. And legends do not die. They grow.